Hello, good afternoon or evening, everyone. Please let me know in the chat if you can hear me. Great. I'm using a new microphone, so I wasn't sure if I had done the right thing. Good. Okay. Did everyone get my reminder email an hour ago? Okay, thank you. Because I always have students, I get it's confusing, but I always have students who join my office hours link instead of this one. And I have a few students not right now. All right. Let me get rid of that. I think we're good to go. And clean room and okay. Well, welcome everyone. How's your Wednesday going? I'm gonna resend this out for the students. Sorry, just a moment. We'll get started. Okay. Going well, been rough. Oh no, why rough? Good, stressful. Yeah. It's been less busy. That's good to hear. Mine is going all right. I have also been busy. I'm like going through everybody's blogs and stuff. This is the biggest class that I've ever taught for this. So, bear with me with getting grades out and everything. A trailer for your favorite show? What's your favorite show, Ellie? Yeah, Amelia, that's what I was saying. Well, nothing bad's happened, so. Oh, our flag means death. I have heard of that. I have not watched it though. All right. Okay. And everyone see the PowerPoint? Let me go here. I think so, right? Good. Okay. So we are going to talk about North Korea, art in North Korea, which is everyone should know that. But first I wanted to start. So how were the assignments overall this past week? Were they too much? Were they just right? Did you have any questions pertaining to how to complete assignments, about grading or anything like that? If you didn't like them, you can tell me you didn't like them. I can't change it, but you can tell me. No questions. Good. I'm glad that they weren't too difficult. Good. Okay. Yes, I thought I was very impressed with the blogs. Usually at the beginning of the course, the blogs are like a little hit or miss, but everyone seems to understand what you're supposed to be doing. Yes, there's a lot of reading. But I have tried to pick readings that are straightforward. I think this week is probably the most reading. And then I think week 6, which is when we talk about contemporary art, there's a reading that is very long that you'll have to read. But good, I'm glad you found them interesting, David. Good, and I'm glad you learned a lot. So, okay, so do you need to cite sources in the blogs? You are not required to cite sources in the blogs because you're already talking about the readings. I already know kind of what you're referring to. Everyone kind of does. However, if you want to include a quote, which I saw many people do this, or if you just want to include a citation, which again, there were people already doing this, you are more than welcome to do so. Especially if you're using like a quote, like something directly from the reading. Sorry, I need to set my timer. Please do that. But yeah, you're not going to lose points if you didn't use it. Good. I'm glad you enjoyed the video. We're going to talk about it in just a moment. All right. So something I should have mentioned last week is about next week. So if you are diligent and you looked at the syllabus, we don't have a plenary session next week. I am going to be gone. I am going to Korea on Friday, and I won't be back for a week. So instead of joining a plenary session, we are going to watch, you'll have a separately recorded lecture video, and you'll watch it. It's like 40 minutes or something, and you'll complete the plenary response, which we'll learn how to do that today based on that. There's kind of, so because of that, there's kind of a lot of, there's another lecture video for that week. So I would focus more on the one that it says is the one that's not for the plenary session, or that the one that is for the plenary session instead, because they're both kind of long. They're both about 40 minutes. That wasn't my choice. I just wanted to know that, but yeah. So, but you can do it on your own time too. So, yeah, and it's all on Canvas. So are there any questions, outstanding? If you have questions, I'll still have access to my email and everything, so I'll be able to respond to you. Yes, I am very excited. I haven't been to Korea since 2019 because of COVID and then getting busy with my own stuff. So, okay. If there's no questions, extra credit update. So basically almost everyone responded to this. And so we are going to do the extra credit opportunity, and the dates that I'm going for are going to be, I'll have two options for you: Tuesday in the morning, October 10th, and Friday in the morning, October 13th. I'm just sent the message to the museum to put it together, so I'll know for sure, hopefully within the next week or two. And there will be, I've already created it. I just have to make sure the dates and everything are confirmed with the museum. I'll upload and let you know, a PDF about what you can do for the assignment if you cannot attend. But basically what I think we'll do is like a tour where we do a self-guided tour with me, and I might have the curator, I might ask the curator and one of my friends who works there to join us. And we're going to look at 2 or 3 of the objects that are on display. There's plenty more on display, but it'll probably be about an hour. And it sounds like a long time, but if you actually do what we end up doing in class in person, it takes kind of a while. And then you'll just submit, like, what I'm hoping is that you'll be able to bring whatever it is that you use to type, a laptop or a screen of some kind, and you can just write your response while we're there in the museum and just submit it on Canvas. So yeah, don't worry too much about it right now because I don't have all the details done, but just letting you know, we are going to have that opportunity for the course. So are there any questions about that? And it'll make more sense once I have the final document ready. Okay. All right. So let's here's our attendance question. Let's start talking about North Korea. So a lot of us were saying we liked the David Kong video. So what were some of the things that David Kong touched on? A lot of you were very happy with this video in your blogs as well. What are some stereotypes about North Korea, and what does Kong say that we need to remember, though, or that what we need to kind of think about before we start just espousing stereotypes about North Korea? What do you think? Yes. People who live in North Korea, it's their norm. There's nothing unusual about it to them, right? Exactly. Good. And they're not brainwashed. Yes, exactly. I mean, there are definitely brainwashed people, but the vast majority of people who live in North Korea are not brainwashed. Although that is our stereotype, like Lillian said here, right? Brainwashed robots. Yeah, it's their life, it's their reality, and they're just going through the everyday. Exactly. It's so important to remember that the North Korean people are people. They are humans. They have humanity, just like all of us do. And that exactly, very good here, Molly. That doesn't mean you're supporting the regime. If you're, empathizing with North Korean people, that doesn't mean you're supporting the regime. Exactly. Yes, they do have knowledge about the outside world and what it's like. They have a lot of knowledge actually about it. If you which unfortunately, I wish we had a component where we actually heard from North Korean people in this unit but they talk about that all the time, like, oh yeah, we know what's going on outside. Good. Miserable. They're all miserable. Yeah, that's a stereotype. That's not necessarily true. There are a lot of people who are miserable, but even people who you might think should be miserable, they're not actually, they don't actually see their life like that, right? Lots of propaganda, absolutely. And that's what we're going to talk a lot about later. Yeah, it's basically, it's their normal, exactly. So then what a lot of us are talking about the people. What about the government? What are some of the visions of the government that we have, particularly in the United States? And what their government kind of acts like. I see a lot of people, because I see a lot of us are talking about the people here, but he talks about that as well. What is our view of the way their government works? So yeah, dictatorship. So okay, we have this here. So the government. So the government is as like, they're more strict, mostly communist dictatorship. Let's see. We see the government as like, yeah, here we go, overpowering. The military complex, exactly. There's this idea that North Korea, the government is just like a huge threat, right? Or there's just something about it that we really need to be worried about. They're just inherently violent, right? What do you notice about these two stereotypes? Stereotypes about North Korean people and stereotypes about the government. What's kind of interesting when you put these two, when you actually critically think about these two stereotypes next to each other? Well, they're all negative, yeah. But does it make sense? Does it make sense that North Korea can simultaneously be like this brainwashed, oppressed place and also this like violent, threatening to the United States? They're kind of opposites. Yeah, what Kevin said. They're kind of, when you look at them next to each other, maybe there's a causal relationship, but we kind of have these two opposing images of North Korea. One is where they're very sad and oppressed, and one is where they're like a threat, an immediate threat to the United States, and they are going to be violent against us, right? So they kind of have a little bit of a dissonance there. And then the reality, which we talked about, is that people just live their normal lives, right? There's people who they work out in the fields, just like they do in South Korea, just like they do here in Kansas. There's plenty of farmers. People just go on their daily commutes to their jobs. How they get their jobs is different than here, but this for them is their everyday life. So, and I think our class is already pretty good on this point here. We have to kind of distinguish between the government and the people, right? So that's important on the one hand, but then also we kind of want to criticize and think more critically about the relationship between these two entities, right? So let's talk about a little bit more deeply living in North Korea. So the Tonju. So despite the stereotype that all people in North Korea are oppressed and poor, there's actually a small but significant upper class, which we read about, right? I don't think he used this term though, Lankov, Tonju. In North Korea, so Tonju means money and it means master. Ton is money and Ju is from the Chinese character for master or owner. They're all in Pyongyang and they're families that have close connections or favor with the North Korean regime and the People's Party. So Tonju arose during the 1990s because they were able to capitalize off of the famine that was occurring in North Korea at the time. And the regime to this day doesn't officially condone their economic activities, but they do continue to do them. So they make money through international trade, much like capitalists all over the world, and they're involved in a plethora of markets, including real estate, food, clothing, cars, and appliances, all of which are foreign made or foreign brands. So on the opposite end of that, we have the Jangmadang. So Jangmadang is for the lower classes, the people who are suffering the harsher socioeconomic conditions in North Korea, particularly in like the rural areas or the peripheral cities. And it's kind of like this quasi free market system. So Chang means market and Madang means garden or yard. So it means like market yard, basically. So these also arose during the 1990s due to famine, and they're still quite strong. They're mostly based on illegal trade between the northern border with China, which makes them a black market of sorts, but it's for basic necessities, not for things like luxury goods. And what's interesting is that currency is actually not as common in Jangmadang as more like traditional bartering for goods is. They look a lot like flea markets, which is kind of what they are basically. And the regime fluctuates between acknowledging their existence and actually cracking down on them. So it's kind of a weird mixture of the regime needs them, but also kind of doesn't like them. Because if the regime didn't have these, then a lot of people would not have the basic necessities that they need. And that would be really bad for the political stability, right? So let's talk about the government. So the chairman of the Workers' Party of Korea. So North Korea is a one-party system, and they're the Workers' Party of Korea. That's kind of the most basic way to understand it. And it's probably the most clear way to understand it, because once we start labeling it like dictatorship or whatever, or communist, we start to get into some ideological things that can be kind of nuanced. So we have the first leader here, who's Kim Il-sung, and then he is the father of the second leader who died back in like 2010 something. I can't remember. 2011. His name is Kim Jong-il. And then we have the current leader, and that's Kim Jong-un. And he also has a sister who has been very active in leadership. Her name is Kim Yo-jong. Not sure if you've seen her or not. So I saw people getting them mixed up. Just do your best to identify them properly, or just do your best. It does get kind of mixed up, especially Kim Jong-il and Kim Jong-un. I'll start talking and I'll get them completely confused because they both start with Jung. So how would you describe this system? So a lot of us said dictatorship. What are some other words you could use to kind of describe what's going on here with leadership in North Korea? Good. Patriarchy. Yes, it seems so far to be patriarchal. So about the men inheriting their position of power. Kim Yo-jong, people predict this or that and the other thing about what she might become or what Kim Jong-un's daughter might become. But for now, it seems patriarchal, right? Communist. So I don't necessarily see communism based on this, what we're looking at right now, but maybe in a little bit we'll get to it. Monarchy. Yes, exactly. Monarchy. It's dynastic. Exactly. All these things. Yeah, monarchical. Is there really another system in the modern and contemporary world that's like this that we can think of? Because on the one hand, they are like a monarchy, but they're not viewed as kings. They're not called kings. They're like the leaders of what's supposed to be a party. So It's kind of unique to North Korea. So people use a lot of different terms to qualify it. So, you're welcome to use really any of them, as long as you can kind of explain why. So what was that name? Does anyone remember? I don't think I saw anyone in the blog use it. What's the name of the economic political ideology of North Korea? And it's not communism and it's not socialism. It's something else. It's a Korean word. Does anyone remember what it was? I think he used it like once or twice. Yes, thank you, Athena and Alex. Yes, Juche. Samantha, yes, Juche. So Juche is the official political and economic ideology of North Korea, and it can be translated as self-reliance in English. So although it has some inspiration from other communist and socialist ideologies, it is its own thing, and it's best understood as such. However, it does not have a clear set of ideological tenets, so it makes it difficult to understand for people outside of North Korea. In 1990, Kim Jong-il referred to it as socialism of our style, but since then, socialism has not really been a term that the Kim regime uses to explain it. So Juche is centered around North Korean exceptionalism, and it espouses isolationism and extreme and nationalism. As you read in Lincoln's text, the practice is quite different though, right? Because North Korea has historically relied on aid from other countries like China and even the United States to provide basic necessities. So Juche is often compared to other socialisms or socialism-based ideologies that developed during the 20th century, like Stalinism and Maoism. And it's understandable because North Korea and the USSR and the People's Republic of China had really close ties through the 40s and 50s. Also, many people like David Kong interpret it as an extreme form of Confucianism because it emphasizes patriarchal hierarchy and ideological education. But who's really at the center of this ideology? Who is it really all about? The Kims. Yes, Kim Jong-un, the Kim family. Exactly. Kim Il-sung, particularly Kim Il-sung originally, but now like just all the Kims, right? So it's about this cult around the Kim family. And there are a lot of different ways that the Kim family cult is maintained and thus maintaining Juche. So one of those ways is myths about the family. So they form and keep this mythology around the Kims, and it's particularly Kim Il Sung and Kim Jong Il. I think later we'll probably see Kim Jong Un related myths, but so Kim Il Sung is credited as the founder of Korean Communist Party, but he's actually never even involved in the Communist Party that formed in the 1920s. He's also believed to have led the war against the Japanese Empire in northern Korea and Manchuria during the 1940s. Oh, I missed this one. Oh, okay. Yeah, Kim Jong-il. Here we go. I'll go back to Kim Jong-il. But he was involved in the guerrilla front in northern Korea, but he was not like the spearhead of the movement. He wasn't even like a general or anything. Kim Jong-il, sending to this second point, so the son of Kim Il-sung is mythicized to have been born on Mount Paektu. And Mount Paektu is the mountain that's on the border between North Korea and China that's believed to be the birthplace of Korean people. However, Kim Jong-il was actually born in a refugee camp in Russia. And finally, I think the most important myth, or many people say, is that the regime tries to downplay that North Korea is dependent or inspired by any foreign cultures or foreign powers. Even though, as we've discussed, North Korea is definitely inspired by many foreign cultures and very dependent on foreign aid. Media is another way that they keep the cult alive. So in North Korea, the party controls all media from television to computers, and all news is carefully skewed to match the government's interests. So the most common subject in North Korean news is the Kims. People in North Korea, especially the Donju, do have computers, and they even have cell phones, but they do not have a legal connection to the internet, like the World Wide Web. They only have a legal connection to the North Korean intranet. So the main thing that media in North Korea tries to portray is that North Korea is a paradise, and everywhere else, especially the US and South Korea, people are just devastated and unhappy. So if you're interested in seeing what North Korean media looks like, you can actually find DPRK Today website. You are able to access it, not from South Korea, but from the United States. You can get onto it. And you can kind of see here already, Kim Jong-un is in all the pictures. Everything is kind of about Kim Jong-un, the party, and everything like that. I don't trust it as a sense of reliable information about what's happening in North Korea, but you can definitely get an idea of what North Korea thinks of itself from it. And then we get to icons. So what are some icons that show up all over the place in North Korea? We did our blog about one or two, kind of. And a lot of us talked about the other ones that Lankov discusses. The portraits, yes, the statues. And these little things, what are these called over here on the right? The pins, yes, the little pins with their faces on them, right? So what's an icon? Think back to the visual analysis module and then the way that Lankov talks about it. If I ask you what is an icon, what are some things you would say? How would you define it? Represents someone to be respected. Very good. Yes, Ellie, that's definitely a part of it. Yeah, something, it represents someone. First of all, it's kind of their likeness, right? It's a representation of what they look like. Good. And then, yes, for reverence, and it's something that's to be respected. Exactly. Very good. Right. It can be recognized. Good. Great. Yes, we're definitely on the right track here. Yeah. So in visual analysis, just the most basic kind of definition is it's just a representation of likeness. So it looks like Kim Il-sung, it looks like Kim Jong-un, therefore it's an icon of Kim Il-sung or Kim Jong-un, right? And then we're getting into this issue of the reverence, respect, worship. I see, Charlie. Yeah, worship. Significance, Samantha or Sam. Yeah, so in the religious or an ideological sense, it's something that you use to worship. It helps you worship it or demonstrate respect or reverence, right? As part of like the ritual. And then there's this also, there's kind of this more contemporary use of icon, right? So a popular icon or like in popular culture, there's someone who's just really loved and adored, right? So like an icon of, I don't know, like she's an icon or like, like Beyonce is an icon of music, right? Something like that. So, where are all these icons? So what, actually, no, sorry. So how are these icons working in relation to these definitions? What do you think? How do they relate? Can you only pick one definition to use? Are there a couple of different ways that these function as icons? Yeah, all three, right? In this case, they're kind of all three mixed up. They look like the Kims. They're used as ideological, to show respect to them, and they're also very much loved and adored, and in a lot of the same way that we love and adore celebrities, right? So where can you find all these icons in North Korea? Homes, factories, everywhere. Yeah, I think the simple answer is Alex's answer, which is everywhere, which is what I put, right? Yeah, people wear them, take them to special, you go to visit them, right? And we have all of our examples here. I should have flipped this around. Good. So let's practice what we were doing. A lot of you have already kind of been doing this when we're doing the blog, right? Thinking about how you would represent the Kims. So let's practice our visual analysis. Let's think back to the module. So what's the first part of a visual analysis? What's the first thing we want to really nail down when we're looking at something? Description. Yes, a description. So let's work on describing it, right? So let's talk about the medium. What's the medium of the Montseday Hill Grand Monument? What are some words you might use to describe its medium or media? Bronze. Yes, it is bronze. It's a bronze sculpture. but you can say metal. I would suggest you be more specific and say bronze if you know that. Sometimes you might not, but in this case, it's given to you, right? Yeah, so bronze. It's a bronze statue. Another thing you could say is it's a public monument, right? So it's not something you might want to clarify. It's not something that an individual owns. It's something that's put out for everyone to look at, right? And then in the background here, you don't have to talk about this, but it's important to notice this is kind of part of the monument, right? Is there's a mosaic mural. What is a mosaic? We'll talk about mosaics later. Does anyone know? It's like these small, yeah, it's these small ceramic tiles that you arrange to form a picture. I think that's a beautiful way of that's a really easy way to understand it. Exactly. So then so let's identify the icons. We kind of have the icons identified, right? Who is on our left and who is on our right when you're looking at them, when you're looking at the monument? Who's on the left? Do you remember? Yes. So left is Kim Il-sung and right is Kim Jong-il. Now, how do you know that? What are some ways you can figure that out? What do you think? This is kind of the hard question. The way they're posed, yeah. Okay, I think the way they're posed is very important. Yes. The clothing that they wear. Yes, they wear similar but distinguished clothing, right? So how are their poses different? Let's talk about the poses. How are the poses different? So Kim Il-sung is doing what and Kim Jong-il is doing what? Yes, a lot of you have already talked about this in blog. Yes, Kim Il-sung has his arm outstretched, right? And then Kim Jong-il has he's kind of like in a nonchalance, kind of he has one hand on his hip and his arm to his side, right? And their clothing, how's their clothing different? Good. These are all great ways of describing it. So I do want to say though, when we're doing our description, we want to avoid kind of like abstract notions. This is something that's really hard for students. So for example, like some of us are saying here, Kim Il-sung showing off the country. Well, that's not really what you see. You don't see him showing off the country. What you see Kim Il-sung doing is outstretching and raising his arm, right? And then as a viewer, you connect the dots with your background information to know and interpret that what he's doing is showing off the country. So be careful about that. I'm probably going to make a lot of comments on people's, when we start doing visual analysis here after class about this difference here. Good. So Kim Il-sung's wearing a suit and Kim Jong-il is like more comfortable. Yeah. Kim Jong-il is like, so Kim Il-sung is always shown in a suit and Kim Jong-il is always in like this kind of zip-up jacket. I don't really know why that is, but it's just kind of how they've decided to show them, right? Good. So yeah, the two figures were talked about. I should have put more details there. Composition. So what are some things you can say about the way that the Kims are organized in relation to each other, right? So composition, the way different elements are organized within the artwork. It's not as difficult to in this case it's not as difficult. So they're next to each other. Very good. Yes, Ellie, thank you. They're next to each other, but they're not touching, right? So that's a really good point to make. They're still individual. Good. Yes, Elizabeth, there doesn't seem to be any direct interaction, right? Good, Kevin, they're the same height, and so therefore they're kind of like equal, right? Good. These are great things to comment on. Yeah, they're huge, started by size, arm raised. Yeah. Good. So let's talk about the perspective. So as a viewer, particularly, what kind of perspective on the monument do we get? So we would have to look up to them, right? Yeah, so we are seeing them as like they're going to be a lot bigger than us, number one. And then we kind of develop this relationship between them that is that yes, good, Megan. They look more powerful. There's a hierarchy between us, right? There's just little us and big old statues of the Kims. Good. Good. Yes. And then the viewers themselves, they kind of point us toward the sky, which I think we are getting to with the arm, right? So you don't know this, but they're particularly looking east. They're facing east, right? So that's another thing is what do the figures indicate to us the way that they're looking or where their focus is? That's also part of the perspective. All right. So are there any questions about these aspects of description? Yeah, the proportions might be distorted. Yeah, when it's hard to do it from an image, right? And then like even this image, I kind of like this image because there's people at the bottom here, but I kind of also like, I don't know, does it kind of skew the way we interpret it? Not sure, the way we see it. Is there any questions about this? Oh, il because il is just like a syllable in Korean. I actually don't know what it's from a Chinese character. I don't know which one it is in this particular case. But it's just a coincidence that it's Kim Il-sung and Kim Jong-il. It's just a coincidence. I could go into a big tangent about how Korean names work, but don't worry too much about that. We can talk about that after class if you want. Oh, okay. So style. So now let's talk about style here. I forgot about this one. This is very important. So how would you describe the like overall style is how it looks overall. So what would you say about how it looks overall, the way it looks overall? I don't know if that's like helping you understand, but good. Yes, I think this is a good, yeah, hyper realistic. Yes, it looks realistic. That's a very good way to describe it. Grand. Yes, you could say it is a very grand style. That's fine as well. Um, good. It's very detailed. Yes, the style is very detailed. Good. So things like intimidating, joyful, those aren't really descriptions of the style because those are kind of the way we feel or the way we interpret how the figures feel, right? So again, we have to kind of go deeper. But what we're just looking at is what we see. Okay. It's again, it's a hard thing to kind of pinpoint the difference between like, because in English we often say, well, they look happy, right? But when you're making that judgment, you're actually taking what you see and then you're using background information to like surmise things about what you see. Okay. So you have to kind of, it's difficult. But yeah, realistic. I said like it has this very shiny style to it, right? There's a lot of detail, just good. All right, so the visual analysis of Monster. Okay, so the second part here, interpret. So what is interpreting? What does it mean to interpret something? I keep saying, you want to be careful between describing and interpreting. But when we're interpreting something, we're doing what? Okay, so one of the things we can do is find the intentions. Good, yes. I think this is the most basic meaning, and it just covers all the points here. What Lauren, Olivia, Samantha, Sam have all said. Just making meaning out of what you see behind the things. Yeah, the meaning behind the things you see. The intentions behind an artwork is just one of those meanings that you can make. There are a lot of different meanings depending on who's looking at the artwork, what question you have, what what your personal interests are, and intentions are just one. In this class, we're going to focus a lot on intentions especially because we're going to be talking about propaganda here shortly. But I want to emphasize that interpretation is just overall making meaning, and intentions are one of those things. Okay, good. So we talked about this. So the iconography is who are they and how do you know? And we've decided Kim Il-sung, Kim Jong-il, the grandness of the clothing, and then the symbolism. So symbolism refers to like what that kind of background meaning is, or what that intended meaning is supposed to be. It's not obvious from what you see necessarily. You have to kind of think deeper about it and connect what you see together with the background here, right? So, what do you think this monument overall signifies, and how does it do that? Some of us are getting there. We're already getting there. Good, yes. Pride for the country. Pride in national identity, exactly. Good. Patriotism, strength and pride, good. So now how? How do we know this? How do we know that? What about it is telling us that? Take what we just described, the things we see. Now, how do we know that? The stance, yes, the stance, because we see it, it's very confident. Good. And Kim Il-sung is pointing outward, right? And so he's kind of pointing our focus to something larger than ourselves, right? The fact that they're so big, exactly. It seems so basic, but we know when we see something like this that's so grand in size, oh, it's important. It should make us feel like this is important, right? Good. Yes, exactly. Yeah, and then the mountains in the mountains in the background. Yes. So the mountains in the background are Mount Pektu. I think I had that somewhere else. And so why would Mount Pektu appear here? What was that myth about Mount Pektu? I just mentioned it briefly. Mount Pektu is, yes, Kim Jong-il was born there, and then quote unquote true Koreans were born there. Yeah, it's like it's supposed to be the birthplace of the Korean race or the Korean people. So that would be put back there, right? What connection does that build with the Kims? Well, it makes them seem like, they're the true leaders of Korea, right? Good. So the greatness and the great future, right? So he's looking east toward the rising sun. It really makes you feel like you're looking towards this bright future. Good. Okay, so does what we're doing here make sense? I feel like we kind of went on a lot of different tangents. Okay. If it doesn't make sense, please be honest and tell me, because what you're going to do for your plenary response is basically what we think through what we just did, but then put it into like 250 words, basically, about artworks we haven't talked about yet. So, and, over the course, we're going to be practicing doing this over and over again. We're going to do this every single week, basically. So you'll get better at it, but it is really important that you understand the basics. All right. So the roots of art in North Korea. Socialist realism. A lot of you brought this up in your blog post. So socialist realism is a genre. So a category of art, and it's not bound by any medium. The term was coined in the Soviet Union or the USSR during the 1930s as a means to explain how art should serve the socialist revolution. In practice, this means that there are lots of images of laborers working together, the government and the workers together happily, and everyone getting along and working toward the common goal of revolution. Thus, socialist realism can be called can be called propaganda, or at least propagandistic, which means that, and you need to remember this, I want to really nail this into your mind. Propaganda is when it's intended to make the viewer either believe something or do something. So in the case of socialist realism, it wants the viewer to believe in the revolution or the state, and it wants them to commit themselves to the revolution and the state, right? But what we have to remember is that although it's realism, right? What did Hong say? It looks real and it's realistic, but that doesn't mean it's true. It's still idealized, right? So the reason I bring up this propaganda thing is because you may or may not see a question at some point that asks you why an artwork is propaganda. And students will always say, well, it's propaganda because it's about the Kims. Well, it's not propaganda because it's about the Kims. It's propaganda because it wants the viewer to believe in the Kims. There's a nuance there. You can have an image of Kim Il-sung that is not intended to make you believe in Kim Il-sung. In fact, there are lots of funny cartoons and images of Kim Il-sung because people are making fun of him, right? So what we want to focus on is that intended, that thing is trying to garner from the viewer. Okay, does that make sense? Do you see how there's a nuance to propaganda? Okay, good. Good. All right. So let's talk about this artwork. So this artwork is 정관철 Steelworkers. I actually really like this artwork from 1957. It's an oil on canvas. So let's practice describing it quickly. So the medium, what would you say is the medium? Yes, I just said it. Oil on canvas. That was a trick. Yes, oil on canvas. So it's important that when you're talking about a painting, you know what kind of paint is used, because different paints have different visualities, right? So there's difference between acrylic, oil, ink painting, which you'll see a lot when you're doing East Asian art. So yeah, oil painting on a canvas. So icons. So who are just some of the people vaguely that we see, or some of the people and some of the things vaguely that we see in this artwork already? Laborers, maybe soldiers, steel workers, various workers, but yeah, laborers are the big ones. Yeah, exactly. Also, you know, this is when you're thinking about the icons, think about like things that are like inanimate objects. Those are also important. So we don't see the furnace, the hot furnace, but you know, we're indexed, so we're kind of led to believe there is a hot furnace, right? So the composition. So how would you kind of describe the way things are organized? Um, you know, who's kind of in the forefront, who's in the who or what is in the background? What do we see versus what is not seen but just kind of indicated? What do you think? Does that make sense? So who's in the foreground? Who's up front close to us in the painting? Good. Yes, workers. Good. Thank you. Great job, Olivia. Yes, we're getting there. Good. Workers are in the front. Yes, the workers are in front and center, right? In the foreground. And then in the background, we have the sense of industry. Good. I like this idea, Elizabeth, here. We're given this sense of industry. There's seems to be like smoke, right? There's it's like some construction going on. They're like moving frames, like steel frames, right? There's maybe some windows in the background, and buildings, right? So we have this kind of factory kind of background that's being indicated to us, right? Good. Okay, now perspective. So what kind of perspective do we get as viewers on this scene, and where are the figures in the scene directing our perspective, or our gaze? So to good, yes. So the tension, I like this, Lindsay. The tension is in the right of the photo with the laborers, yet the attention is kind of toward the smoke and the heat, right? Exactly. We're kind of being told to look to our right, right? We're kind of being geared there. Yes, toward the furnace, right? Because good, very good, Megan. We're at the same level as the workers, so we can kind of put ourselves with them, right? We can think of, oops, sorry. We can think of where they're looking. Good. And then the style. So how would you describe the style here? How does this look overall? Yes, it's very dark. It's very dark. Good. Very important to notice. It's very dark, but there is some light. Loose. I don't know what loose means here. Dirty. Okay, yes, it feels kind of dirty, maybe because it's so dark. Good. Yes, realistic. Yes, it's definitely realistic, right? Definitely realistic. Hazy. Good. Yeah. So overall, I said this too. You know, the brushstrokes, we can't see it. If we saw this in person, we could talk about the brushstrokes and style, but we can't really do that. But yeah, there's this word in art history, when you're talking about this contrast between light and dark, or like light and shadow, it's called chiaroscuro. You don't need to know that word, but that word is definitely defining of this here. So let's talk about what it means. So how is this socialist realism? Why would, you know, what about this makes it a socialist realism? What do we think? There's a lot of different ways you can answer this question. Good. So the subject matter is one of the ways. It shows the workers in rough conditions, right? Okay, good. So the workers are the focus. Good, I like that. And we're in the same view. We're on the same level as them. So it makes us really empathize or sympathize with them, right? Good. Good. Okay, Gabby, you're getting on the right track. So because the subject matter is realistic, and the style, it's a realistic style, or it's a realist style, it's something that could actually happen, right? Good. So the style's overall realistic. The iconography, because it's focused on the workers, right? And then Athena, you actually use the adverb I always use, working diligently, right? They're not workers who are suffering. I mean, we can kind of see that they're suffering in a way, like it's hard work, but we're not seeing them in pain. We don't see them getting hurt, or, you know, from the flames or anything. We see them working diligently. Exactly. Very good. Yeah. And so that brings us to the symbolism here. The workers as central to society. So propaganda. So what does this want the viewers to do, or the viewers to believe? It could be it wants us to do and believe something. I think someone already put it here. Good. Yes, Molly put this here. Encourages us to join the labor, join in the labor, and become part of the group. Exactly. Yeah. Join in the labor. Not only join in the labor, but be diligent, right? Good. Yeah, I mean, pride in your country, you can kind of derive that from everything, but yeah, definitely what Alex says here, pride in labor. There's nothing in here. There's a particular reason, but yeah, work diligently. But I'm not sure we can say pride in the country necessarily, because who is not in this? So this is from the 1950s. The statues from Monster de Grand Monument are 1970s and 2010s. So who is not in this painting? Kim Il-sung. Yes, exactly. The Kims, they are not anywhere indicated in this painting, right? So I think for that reason, it's hard to argue that this painting is about having pride in your country. But I do think saying having pride in your work and working hard, you know, that's definitely the propagandistic message, or propagandic message of it. Good. So does this make sense? Does socialist realism make sense? Good. Okay. All right. We don't have very much time here, so I'm probably gonna, there's always a lot to cover, and we start talking and everything. So let's talk about, a lot of you had this question, artists in North Korea. So becoming an artist in North Korea follows a strict state-sanctioned process. Not just anyone can become an artist, and if you are an artist, you belong to and make art for the state, not for your individual expression. So first you need to be accepted to the Pyongyang University of Fine Art. You can study whatever medium you want and learn how to use that medium to express the ideals of the state. Then you'll be employed by a state-run artist studio, which today is primarily the Monster Day Artist Studio. Artists can earn different levels of merit that and you have different freedoms depending on what rank you have. So people's artist just means that you're pretty good, but a merit artist is like the highest honor, and it means that you have the skills in a variety of subject matter and thus more freedom to make what you want within the government's limits. And this is very similar to the Soviet system from the early 20th century. This is based directly on that system. So this is the Monte Art Studio campus. What do you notice about it? What kind of strikes you about this photo of the Monte Art Studio campus? Considering that it's an art campus. So good. Yes, there's a painting of Kim Il-sung, very important. Good. Yes, it's very plain. It's very plain, right? It is not colorful. If you go on KU campus, we have sculptures all over the place. If you've ever been on any, I've never been to the Kansas City School for Art and Design, but I'm sure the one art and design school I'm familiar with, there is art everywhere. The buildings are colorful. They're constantly engaging the students in artistic projects on campus, right? It is very different from this, right? And here is inside one of the studio galleries where they just display a lot of art. This might be sold to tourists. I'm not really sure. But what do you notice about the art that's on display here? So it's limited in subject. Good. They look a lot similar, uniform, nature focused. Yeah. Does this look like the kind of art that we've talked about so far in regards to North Korean art? What's different about it? Oh, Tanya, you kind of hit it there. Traditional. There's something about it that's traditional, right? Does this look like art that is like preaching the ideology of the state? We have some like embroideries down here. We have some ceramics over here. We just have some flowers and landscapes in the background. No, not really. Not in subject matter, right? This is not exactly socialist realism. This is not exactly propaganda. Now, the system under which it is produced certainly is still within the lines of what we've been talking about. But these actual artistic products, not so much, right? So the reason I show you this is because there is quite a diversity of art in North Korea, even compared to what we've been talking about, right? So there are a lot of Monte Art Studio projects here. We've talked about the public monuments, but let's talk about some of these here. We're not going to do a visual analysis of it, but this is a hand-painted poster. And I don't know what date it is. The text says we cannot allow the use of nuclear weapons by the US imperialists. So what's kind of the big subject here in the center and the background in this painting? Just really easily, what would you say? What does it look like is happening in this poster? Yes, very good. It's a nuke that's covering, or it's a nuke being covered by a child's hand. There's this hand outreaching and it's kind of covering the nuke. So, is this socialist realism? What do you think? Is this socialist realism? No, I wouldn't call it that. I think it's something else. What might you call this kind of genre? What do you think? Sometimes students come up with it, sometimes they don't. So I typically tell people it's okay to call it like graphic art. It's kind of cartoony. There's kind of a comic, like comic as in like comic art feel to it, right? It is painted. It's not printed. It's not digital like graphic art usually is. But there's a lot of similarities in the way it looks, right? So is this propaganda though? Is this propaganda, and why? What is it trying to get us to do or believe if it's propaganda? And how does it do that? Imperialist. Good. Okay, so there's a message about imperialism here. Yes, good. Because it's in propaganda because it leads the viewer to believe that the US wants to bomb North Korea. Good. And very good, Molly. Very important here is threatening the safety of North Korean children. So, okay. So the use of we. So Athena, I think you know Korean. So in Korean, they don't use pronouns like subject pronouns like we do in English. Like every sentence has to start with I, we, you, he, she, they, it. In Korean, they usually omit it. So there is no direct, there's no use of uri or 저희 in this, which literally means we. There's no use of that, but by context we kind of know, or like as an interpreter of this poster, we kind of know that there's a we implied in there. So that's just something to remember, that there's a little bit of a discrepancy in language, in the way language works with propaganda. Good. So yes, good. So I think we're good. So we see the connection here, right? The possible child's hand hitting the nuke, covering the nuke. It's definitely, trying to communicate, we got to stop them, right? Good. So nuclear weapons. So I'll basically just say this. Lankov has this idea of nuclear blackmail, and essentially it's just that North Korea uses nuclear weapons as a way to like drive tensions, and then they call for negotiations because they want to get some kind of aid, and then they'll be happy for a little while, and then they'll go back to starting to threaten it as well. Now, I saw earlier this week there's all these headlines about North Korea is going to arm the Navy with nuclear weapons. They talk a big talk, but are they actually going to do it? Who knows? They are doing a lot more testing than normal, or than usual, but we don't really know. No one really knows what the end goal here is with all the nuclear weapons threats coming from North Korea recently. So the best thing I can tell you is, number one, don't freak out, because a lot of people freak out. But if you decide to freak out about this, you're going to be in perpetual freak out mode because there's something new about it every single week. And read up on a lot of different perspectives on the issues. That's what I'll say about it. So everyday art in North Korea. So let's look at this. So this is a subway, and we have these big pictures here showing up here, right? These are not paintings. These are those mosaic murals, like what we saw behind the Kim statues, right? So these are ceramic tiles that have all been organized and put in this certain way to make this this image on the wall in the subway. So who is here in the center of so what's going on in this image? We'll just say what's going on in this image, the subject matter. Kind of just really briefly, what's kind of going on here? Yes, exactly. Very simply, Amelia and everyone else, yes. Kim Il-sung is in the center, and all these people from these diverse people in numerous different jobs, right? You could probably go through, I mean, it would take us forever to go through and pinpoint every single job, but we could probably figure it out, right? They're all walking with him. Exactly, they're all walking with him, but he's in the center. Exactly. Yeah, so here's him in the center here, right? And how does he look? If you were to interpret the way he looks, what would you say? Jovial. Yes, jovial, happy, content, proud, all these things, right? Yeah. And how do the workers look? The same, right? Yes, also happy. Very good. Yes. So here you can really see the mosaic work on it. It's really cool to see. I've never seen these in person. I've never been to North Korea, but if you've ever seen a mosaic, they're very cool. So, is this socialist realism? Yes. Yes. Now, Is it a particular kind of socialist realism, though? I think there's another kind of realism that was mentioned in the Hong Ji-suk article that he got towards there. Does anyone remember what it was? So socialist realism is focused more on like the workers. This art that's focused a lot on the Kims can be considered what? Do you remember this? Juche realism, right? It's about Juche. So it's not just about the workers right here. It's about the Kims. So you can use these. You can use these either way to describe this genre. But you definitely want to be thinking about the kind of difference here. Socialist realism is focused a lot on the workers. Juche realism is focused a lot on the Kims. This is Kim Il-sung? Yes, this is Kim Il-sung. Right. And the workers. So then what is kind of the meaning, the intended meaning of this artwork here? What are you supposed to feel as someone who looks at it? Yes, it's all everyone coming together, right? Everyone being unified by the dear leader. Everyone in the country is unified, right? Collective, exactly. And it has that sense of pride and hope. You're unified. Yes, exactly. Good. Exactly. Very good. Yeah. I think that's what I put. And he's a leader of the workers. Yes. Can succeed. Together, North Korea can succeed under the leadership of the Kims. Exactly. Good. All right. So plenary responses. So your plenary response for this week, this is the prompt here. What you're going to do is, you're going to submit this by Friday at 11:59 p.m. You can submit it as a Word document or a PDF. Canvas will only accept either of these two file formats. So your response should be about 250 words. And basically what you're going to do is you're going to go more in depth with either the hand-painted poster of the nuke. We cannot allow the use of nuclear weapons by U.S. imperialists, or you can choose to go more in depth on the great leader Kim Il-sung among workers. That's this mosaic mural here. Sorry, I forgot to give you the title of it. So you're going to describe and interpret the artwork. So you're going to conduct a visual analysis of the artwork. You're going to basically think through what we've thought through in class today when we talked about the Monterey Grand Monument statues and the steel workers painting. But what you're going to do is you're going to put it in a more like intelligible essay format, okay? So you want to start with your description, which is just what you see. You want to dig into the details of it, and then you're going to make meaning out of it in relation to those details. So in your interpretation, here's what you need to talk about when you make meaning. Does this artwork qualify as propaganda? Why or why not? What is its message, and how does it succeed or fail in communicating that message? Also, you need to include one citation to either the Lankov reading or the Hong reading about socialist realism, okay? Remember those citations, they just need to be last name, comma, page number. When you go on Canvas and you click on the assignment, which is under the course material, weekly course materials, you'll see this prompt and you'll see image files for the two images that you can download, and you can, zoom in on them and zoom out on them and stuff like that. Okay. So, what you'll be graded on is if you follow the prompt correctly. So you do your visual analysis, you have description and interpretation, and you answer the correct questions in your interpretation. That's 4 points. And then you'll have 3 points just for a citation alone, 3 points just for the citation, and then it's been properly cited, and it's actually something that they said. And then you get 3 points for proving to me that you put effort into writing it. So you didn't just write it and then submit it. You wrote it, you thought about it, you reviewed it, you edited it, and then you submitted it. Okay. So this is worth 10 points. So it's basically just like an after-class blog response in a lot of ways. So yeah. So are there any questions about the plenary response? Yeah, so for the citation format, you don't need to put like a full reference. Like I said, you can just do the parentheticals because I know the sources. And if I went through and graded all your bibliographic entries, it would take me forever. And so for this class, we're not doing an original research paper ever, so you don't really need to worry about it. But just do parentheses, which is last name of the author, comma, page number. Okay. But good question. If you want to do a bibliographic entry just to do it, and show me that you're interested in doing it, Chicago style should be what you use in art history and arts and humanities. That's usually what's used. So, all right. So there's no questions. We have like 5 minutes here. So this was brought up. This will be our last question here. This was brought up a lot in the blogs. So what is the difference between the art in North Korea, that's kind of for the Kim cult, and the art in the United States that is paying homage or respect to like founding fathers or leaders, presidents, or just anything like that? Because a lot of us had opinions on this point of difference. And I think I think there is a difference, but it's not as obvious. What do we think? So no, I'm not talking about, it's not necessarily how they look. It's not necessarily how they look that I'm talking about. But I'm talking about like the underlying meaning, or the underlying intent. So yes, okay. So U.S. citizens don't usually bow to things like Mount Rushmore, right? Good, but at a certain point, they have similar purposes, right? So, but do we praise the monument? I mean, people go in the United States, people spend their vacations. They make hours upon hours of a trip just to go see this, just to go see Mount Rushmore. Same thing with the statues of the Kims, right? We respect it, but not in such an overt way, right? So the praise is similar, but not so overt. So let's think about Mount Rushmore here. Do you have to like it? Do you have to think that this is a good thing? Yes, here we go. Okay, we're getting toward it, Anna. Yeah. So they both show the power of the leaders, but you don't have to show respect to Mount Rushmore, right? Now, if you don't, people will get mad at you, but the government in the United States is specifically not allowed to either make you do it or not, right? So there's a particular group of people who are present in the United States who do not like Mount Rushmore at all, or generally speaking, they're not. Who are they, and what is their argument against this, right? Do you know who have you heard of this? Have you seen this stuff? Yes, indigenous people of the United States are very, not as, not everyone, but in general, people who are indigenous, they see this as a desecration of the Black Hills, which is a sacred site, especially for the Lakota people. It was a sacred mountain before it was Mount Rushmore, right? So, but in the United States, now, Native American people are very oppressed in the United States, indigenous people are. But they're still allowed to express that dissent against it, right? But if I were to go up to these statues here, right, and I just started saying something like, the Kims are stupid, they're not great leaders, they're just screwing over everyone in the country, what would happen? What would happen to me if I did that? I would get into massive trouble. Yes, exactly. Yes, here it is. Yes, okay. So the difference isn't necessarily, so, they're both made for praising these leaders. They're both, realistic looking. They're both monuments. People spend money and time to go visit them and praise them. But the difference is that in North Korea, the state will not allow you, or is permitted to not allow you to voice dissent against it. Whereas in the United States, you are allowed, and generally speaking, I think everyone kind of agrees that you should be allowed to express dissent against that art. So does that kind of make sense, where we can kind of see the difference here? Now, I'm not saying the United States is perfect. I don't think the United States is perfect. And, personally, you're welcome to feel however you want to feel about Mount Rushmore, but I tend to lean on the side of Indigenous people. But, in North Korea, this dissent just is not allowed to exist, right? So good. So does that make sense? Great. Yes. Good. Because a lot of us had, I saw a lot of us have some different opinions on what the nuance was, right? Good. All right. So, if you have questions about North Korea, you can ask me. I've never been to North Korea, but I do know a lot about it. At this point, we're kind of done. You're free to go if you need to. But I just wanted to open that up to anyone, because I know sometimes people want to ask questions that maybe aren't so nice about North Korea, but you're welcome to do that. But otherwise, thank you so much for this, for bearing through with me today. I think this was kind of a lot, probably, but yes, I will have fun. I think I'll have fun. I'm going to be very tired. That's my problem. The time change is very hard for me, so that's my only thing I'm like dreading. But yeah, thank you all very much. And have lovely weeks. Yes, thank you, Molly. Yes, I should have mentioned this. Crash Landing on You is a great it's a Netflix original, right? I think, and it's actually very accurate in the way it explains and explores the difference between North and South Korea. Yeah, Crash Landing on You. Good.
Hello.
Hi, Ellie.
I like
Do you need to talk?
misread.
Oh, yeah. Do you need
I
to talk to me
misread
about something?
the what?
Sorry. Does everyone here need to talk to me about something? Alex, David, do you need to talk to me about something? Okay. Let me put, I don't know if David does. Let me put everyone into waiting room first, so we can do this one-on-one. All right, so let me do this, put in waiting room.